Greater Sandton and beyond. Get ready for the Sandton Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone in between and beyond, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour, edition 221, week 46 of 2025. I'm Alexander Leibner, and a very special welcome to everyone listening for the very first time. If that's you, pull up a chair, join the fun for the next hour, and if you're a regular listener, well, it's good to have you back again. If you're tuning in from Johannesburg and Pretoria, across South Africa, and everywhere or anywhere else in the world, if it's online or on air, wherever you are, I'm happy to report that all is well in Sandton land. Joined again by my left-hand man, Vincenzo, behind the mixing desk. And Vincenzo, thanks for checking in. Yes, shoulder's doing much better. And what a story that is, maybe for another day. But we're ready for another fabulous hour with you. And this past week, having a quick look at the diary, with very limited mobility this past week, I managed to attend a handful of interesting events, one of them being an insightful TikTok workshop for media. Media has dramatically evolved in the life and times of social media, so TikTok decided to bring together a whole bunch of media people to discuss the future of media in the world of social media. Very, very interesting morning. Then there was the opening of the Inverroche House of Amber experience in Rosebank. And if you haven't had a chance to check this out, it's running until the 14th of December 2025 in Oxford Parks. And if you enjoy a bit of gin or you just enjoy a really good dining and drinks experience, well, go check out this House of Amber that's opened. Certainly the launch is anything to go by. It's quite an indulgent and luxurious experience. Then there were the summer sundowner sessions at the Peach Hotel and the Short Market Club, and that was certainly something to go check out, as well as the opening of the Goddess Factor Medical Aesthetics Studio in Bryanston. I feel like saying it like Carrie Ann. Goddess Factor. Almost, Vincenzo, almost, but not quite. And that's why they get her to do it, and not me. What's on the menu this week? Well, in a bit, I'll be chatting to the CEO of the auction house in charge of selling off one of the most prime pieces of real estate in Africa. Take a listen to that. Then one of South Africa's leading pharmacy groups has changed up its rewards program, and I'll be getting a bit more info on that, and certainly all the details. As always, I then catch up with our regular entertainment commentator to take a look at some of the interesting documentaries that are on streaming at the moment. And finally, I chat to the author of a new book that'll help you discover your own inner narcissist. You won't want to miss that. Another quality hour this week, and I'd also like to hear from you. So if you'd like to get in touch, you can send through your questions, comments, and feedback on email editor@sandtontimes.co.za, via social media @Sandton Times, or on the website sandtontimes.co.za. And then, of course, there's always the WhatsApp line 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866, exclusive to the Sandton Times. And if you're not part of our regular podcast community online, make sure to subscribe on the Sandton Times Hour wherever you get the great podcasts that you enjoy, on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, AfriPods, Podcast Party, and so many more. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
Now, if you've ever driven past the Sandton Gautrain Station and wondered what could possibly rise from the vast stretch of land right next to Sandton City, well, here's the answer. One of South Africa's most valuable underdeveloped properties is once again up for grabs. At nearly 4 hectares, this prime site sits at the very heart of Sandton's business hub, surrounded by corporate giants, luxury retail, and the country's best connected transport network. It's been zoned for everything from residential and retail to hospitality and transport facilities, making it a developer's dream if you've got the budget for it. Joining me now to unpack this rare opportunity and the high-stakes auction process behind it is Norman Raad. He's the CEO of Broll Auctions and Sales, the firm facilitating the sale. And Norman, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Norman, this sounds like one of those big property stories in the country right now that just has some great landmark site kind of opportunities attached to it.
Yeah, so well, I think it's the most iconic property in South Africa and in Africa because it's in the heart of Sandton City, adjacent to the Nelson Mandela Square, across the road from Sandton City, which links the square. You know, it covers almost like a kind of a whole block, ideally situated for almost anything. I mean, it's got 200,000 square meters of bulk, of mixed-use bulk. That means they can develop commercial buildings, some offices. They can do retail. They can extend the retail. They can do hospitality, hotels. So it's a vast majority of what you can do there. And where it's situated, I really don't believe there is a better and more valuable property in South Africa. And if you're looking across our continent, I mean, in the capital of any metropolitan throughout Africa, you will not find a better placed property.
Well, look, I remember the original Kokoro Central plans that were drawn up years ago when it was originally planned to be developed. And I mean, it looked incredible with apartments. I mean, I think there were plans for art galleries, restaurants like a piazza like Nelson Mandela Square that would feed into Nelson Mandela Square. I suppose whoever takes over this property is now not bound to those plans. I mean, you can kind of do something similar, but on your own terms or your own ideas and creativity.
So yes, those plans basically were approved and still exist. But I think, things have changed over the last 15 years. The demand for commercial in the Sandton area is changed drastically. They just need to be amended a little bit. I mean, maybe you don't have the demand for 200,000 square meters of bulk, but maybe there is a demand for 100 around there with a bit of a mixed use flair. So yes, they can be amended, and they will be amended according to our times that we are going through at the moment.
Absolutely. Now, let's just quickly rewind the clock, because I remember you and I chatting, I think it's a year or two ago, when this property went to tender as an auction originally. I mean, it was kind of almost like the same conversation we're having right now.
Originally, I remember the conversation, I remember the process, and it was actually a very successful process, which we believed that we had run. I mean, remember that the property value was close on R1 billion that we had from a valuer. The creditors that were owed money were, it was a little bit less than that. And the mandate price that we had been given to run a tender process by the liquidator was sitting at around 650 million, which we were quite happy to run the process. We believed that we were going to get close to that. Unfortunately, we had about a half a dozen offers, ranging from 200 all the way to 550 million from one renowned residential developer who develops in Gauteng, Sandton, and in Cape Town. They unfortunately, after they were the highest bidder, didn't meet and fulfill their obligations. We tried for a few months to give them a few months extension, and at the end of the day, the property came back onto the market being unsold.
Now, in terms of international interest, I mean, I was just doing the numbers right now. What is that? $36 million? Doesn't sound like an expensive piece of property compared to places like London, Paris, Madrid. That sounds like a bargain.
Well, I don't want to talk the property down, but I really don't think we're going to get to those levels. I think we can expect the property prices, the bidding to start from about 100 or 150. And I think maybe if we have a successful auction, we'll get to the 350 mark. But it's in that range. Definitely, I don't see us getting anywhere close to those levels. There's a lot more reality that it's set in. I think the main creditors and the liquidators understand the values of property in the Sandton area with the vast amount of vacancies, and the offices have been through a difficult time. So the value is not going to get to that level. So when you're talking about maybe $15 million or $20 million, it is still next to nothing for a property that size. You can't buy an apartment in these metropolitans, a house in Cape Town for that kind of money. But I can tell you, because of the expectations and because of the more realistic sale, there's a lot more people, there's a lot more interest. And I really do think it's going to be a lot more well attended, and there's going to be a good sale. Yeah,
I know we mentioned this last time as well when we had this conversation, but this time around, do you think that there'll be a little bit more international interest, FDI, into Sandton?
So there is already a lot of interest, but it's not direct interest. All the interested parties have come in through a partner that are interested. So they're bringing in funding and money from Dubai and Saudi money and maybe possibly UK and American money. So there is, but we're not dealing directly with them. So we've reached out to all our connections and our database and through but they work through like local partners and those vehicles. So obviously we don't know exactly to what extent they've decided to pursue this matter, but it's most certainly with local partners. hopefully the G20 summit, people will be aware we're doing a massive marketing campaign, and over the G20 summit, they'll see that it's on auction. Surely there'll be some activity there, and we just want questions asked, because once people understand and see the site, I think it sells itself,
Well, you'd think so, compared to what you see in other big cities around the world. You're literally around the corner from the stock exchange. You're in the heartland of, as we say, Africa's richest square mile. I mean, it would be a no-brainer. It seems like an obvious choice.
I read in a great article about Gauteng, about Johannesburg City this morning from one of the property doyens in the industry. And you know what, he speaks exactly, he's thinking exactly like me. I know I'm not an economist and I'm not a fortune teller, but I can promise you we're at that space where Gauteng is going to fly. I'm telling you now, we're at rock bottom. There's a lot of good things going on. There's a lot of silently the roads have been fixed and there's a bit of infrastructure getting done. I think maybe the spotlight is on, should I say, people in charge of councils, municipalities and government. And I think, a lot of heads are going to roll unless something gets done. They can't, I don't want to say this too loudly, but they can't loot everything. They've got to leave something on the table to get something done. And I can tell you, Gauteng is coming off of a very low base. And I think as soon as something happens, and especially that site, it could really spark and trigger something far greater than anything else that we've seen. More cranes up in the sky and a lot more development. Just the excitement and euphoria of getting involved will bring a lot more investment there.
Well, I certainly know there's somebody in the world who would probably say this is a great deal. But if somebody wants to get hold of this great deal, what do they have to do? I know the bids close on the 27th of November. And what's the process from there?
So it's a closed boardroom auction. It'll be held at our group offices. The registration is a refundable deposit of 150,000 Rand. But more importantly, you need to provide proof of funding from your bank to say you have the ability to perform, because we don't want anyone coming there to bid and not have any ability to perform. So it's not a difficult process, but we want to know who our buyers are. I believe there's going to be between a half a dozen and a dozen bidders, and maybe something will come out of that, because I do know that there's a lot more interest at these levels, and people are starting to get excited about things happening with the city and with Gauteng, and hopefully the G20 will add some flavor to it.
Certainly a fascinating time. Norman Raad, he's the CEO of Broll Auctions and Sales. As mentioned, this is the property just above the Sandton Gautrain Station, or the property that makes up the block of the Sandton Gautrain Station on the corner of West and Rivonia. Bids close on the 27th of November. We'll put more details up on the Sandton Times website. And Norman, thanks for making the time to chat.
Thank you.
Time for a quick break on the Sandton Times Hour, and more in a short bit.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
So if you've ever stood at a till at a Dis-Chem, swiping that little green benefit card and wondering if anything's actually going to happen or if it does anything, well, you might not be alone, and you might be surprised that things have changed. After 23 years, Dis-Chem has officially retired its old loyalty card and has replaced it with something entirely new, known as BetterRewards, considered to be a loyalty reboot. Joining me now to unpack this retail development and to share how BetterRewards could change the way South Africans shop, save and stay healthy is Craig Swanepoel, the Chief Integration and Growth Officer at Dis-Chem Pharmacies. And Craig, welcome to the Sandton Times Hour.
Thanks, Alex. Great to be here.
So Craig, the pharmacy sector in South Africa has undergone some major shifts in recent years. What do you see are some of the biggest changes that are shaping the industry right now?
Alex, I think that the pharmacy industry is increasingly becoming accepted as the front door of the healthcare ecosystem in the country. It's typically the first port of call when you're not well. And what we're seeing is an increased adoption, particularly of pharmacy clinics. Every single one of our pharmacies has at least one clinic in it. And people are increasingly accepting that nurse-led care is a cost-effective entry point to the healthcare system. Our OTC counters are increasingly frequented. I mean, the consumer's under financial pressure, so they typically go to self-medication as a first stop. And we're also seeing that people are prioritizing their health. We often talk about pre-COVID and post-COVID, and particularly in this post-COVID era, this prioritization of one's health through prevention, through screening, through eating healthier. So we're definitely seeing this trend towards health.
It's interesting, in a conversation I had with Ryu at the launch of this BetterRewards, who's your CEO for Dis-Chem, I posed the question, is there any more space to open any more pharmacies? Was the potential for growth? And during that chat, I discovered that South Africa still has a very large underserviced sector. Maybe not in the major metropolitan areas, but probably in the wider metropolitan areas. And I was quite fascinated to hear that a lot of South Africans still consider their go-to for medication government or public spaces or infrastructure.
Yeah, Alex, 100%. And what we're seeing is of the stores that we open, and this is kind of a reflection of the last 2 years, is that 40% of our new stores opened are actually in new developments. So not only is there this underserved market, but there's a lot of new property going into the ground. So 40% over 2 years. This year we'll open in excess of 30 stores. So 40% of that is new development space. But you're absolutely right. The underserved market is definitely an opportunity. We see ourselves as a mass market brand appealing to all South Africans. And you also have to remember that people don't necessarily consume healthcare only where they live. They consume healthcare where they work. There's often quite a long commute. So you might look at Sandton and say that is a well-developed, higher income node. But the reality is a lot of the people that work in Sandton probably are traveling 30 plus kilometers. So we are increasingly servicing more and more of South Africa. And as we evolve our footprint, the opportunities are always going to be in metropolitan areas, but increasingly in, let's call them peri-urban areas. So as long as there's a market, and we're very deliberate around how we determine opportunities for expansion, we will go there. So a lot of our new space is in these markets that you're describing.
You've now launched this BetterRewards program as a whole new way to reward your customers. Why the need to change something that already seemed like it was doing pretty well?
It's been very successful for us. The previous benefit card program was in existence for over 20 years. But I think the consumer has changed. And if you don't respond to changing consumer trends, patterns, expectations, you become irrelevant. So the approach to the new loyalty program was very much research-led. We listened to the consumer. And we took that feedback on board. And in some of our design principles up front, we were actually wrong. And when we listened to the consumer and we took their feedback, we were able to pivot early on in the design process and ensure that what we launched was highly relevant and met consumers' expectations and needs.
Well, for those people listening, one of the key differentiators with the new program versus the old one is that you're no longer getting these sort of banked credits that you can spend later on. You're actually getting those instant rewards right at the till. And clearly there's a bit of customer insight or something that you must have had to see that people would rather prefer getting a discount right now than banking credits or points or money that they can spend later.
You're absolutely right. And maybe a couple of learnings that we took from this research that we did. We're living in this world of instant gratification, and that is equally true of rewards and of value. As opposed to banking it, consumers overwhelmingly wanted the reward instantly. We're operating and living in this financially stressed world. So the need to take and bank that value immediately was what consumers wanted. We also looked at our program, and what our program originally was giving back 1.5% on the entire shop. And 1.5% doesn't really influence your buying decision. But when you look at a 10%, and our program is designed in such a way that you can stack your discounts. You can boost your discounts 10 plus 5 plus 5 based on your engagement level with our partners and our ecosystem. You can get to a meaningful discount. And we really wanted to land what was a deep and meaningful discount on partnered brands in this value-driven economy of ours.
Well, it reminded me of a talk I was listening to just this past week by Rory Sutherland, the vice chairman of Ogilvy in the UK. And he was saying it's interesting how a discount on a member card or some sort of rewards program is considered higher or of more value than a discount that is just given to everybody. And I thought it was quite interesting how psychologically these things play a big role in the way people purchase things. Now, there's people who are out there who clearly have built up a bit of points or might still have some money lying on their previous generation rewards card. What happens to that money? How long do they have to spend it, or can they still spend it?
So they will no longer earn it since we launched on the 21st of October, but any banked points that consumers would have accumulated will remain valid and can be redeemed up until the end of April 2026. So there is this window period for redemption. So we would encourage all of our shoppers to redeem those points that they had banked before that date.
You've got quite an extensive portfolio of brands on board so far in terms of the products that people can get discounts on. Is there now a drive to kind of grow that basket of products, or do you think it's quite sufficient where it's at?
But we will look to evolve it. I mean, I made the point earlier that things cannot remain static. You need to continuously reinvent yourselves. You need to listen to what consumers need. And it's really around how we partner with these brands to deliver value. We will look to evolve that. We'll never have full shop penetration, but we'll look to evolve that and take learnings over time. And this is a one of a kind partner-powered brand reward program. And it's really around how we deliver value to all stakeholders, the brand owners, the consumers. So it really is a coherent, aligned program.
Well, there you have it, the BetterRewards program at Dis-Chem. If you see the signs up, you know what it's all about, and make sure that you do your transition sooner rather than later. And Craig Swanepoel, the Chief Integration and Growth Officer at Dis-Chem Pharmacies. It's been so great to chat to you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Alex, thank you for the opportunity.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
And as we head into the second half of the Sandton Times Hour this week, my name is Alexander Leipner, and if there's anything that sounded interesting, you didn't get all the details, but you'd really like to know what that was, that name, that show, that place, all you have to do is go onto the website, check out the show notes under sandtontimes.co.za for this week's edition, and there'll be a breakdown of pretty much everything we've discussed and a little bit extra with some links, some further reading. And it's your one place to go to if you want to find out what we've discussed on the show. Also, be sure to check out the Sandton Times social media accounts on your preferred social media platform at Sandton Times. And then also make sure you save the WhatsApp number 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866 for all your voice notes, text messages, and so much more. And if you go onto your updates, there's also a WhatsApp channel dedicated to the Sandton Times. As always, this time of the hour, we chat to our regular entertainment commentator, Tat Wolfen. And Tat, I see you've been diving into a bit of Showmax documentaries.
Yeah, well, you may remember that a couple of weeks ago, you and I were moaning about the fare on Showmax and saying that it wasn't looking that great, which was a shame because Showmax, I think, is the best streaming outlet we've got going. But they have come to my rescue because I was on this week and I see a whole bunch of new stuff has come in, including a lot of very strong documentaries.
Okay.
And the one that first caught my attention was a thing called TikTok Boom, but Tik spelled the Afrikaans way, T-I-E-K, TikTok Boom. And it's about the whole subculture of Afrikaans TikTok communities. Starts off by talking about the nice stuff, and then it gets into some really, really dark stuff. Now, the show is hosted by a local journalist called Mariska Kutzer. Now, I don't know whether you remember, she was very involved in that documentary about that awful cult in Krugersdorp, was it?
Duivelsdorp, was it called? What was it called?
It was called, I think it was called Duivelsdorp. Yeah, right.
Yes, or something like that.
Yeah, and she's a very compelling and entertaining presence. But you may also remember that she notoriously fell in love with one of the killers once he'd been imprisoned. So because she does talk about the darker side of the TikTok, the Afrikaans TikTok community, but it really is shocking. There are people on there who have no dignity, no class, no decency, and zero humanity. It's shocking, the vulgarity, the offensive, aggressive outpouring that goes on. It's really, I may have used the word gobsmacking already, but I'm going to use it again. It's gobsmacking. And it's all out there for you to see. The thing is, because they communicate in Afrikaans, they don't come to the attention of the, what would you call them, like the regulators, the TikTok regulators, as much as if they had been English.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I attended a TikTok workshop this week, which had nothing to do with Swiss watchmaking and more to do with the social media platform. And this is exactly one of the things that we spoke about. There was an entire section on, moderating and, seeing what happens on the community and what people post. And naturally, the global TikTok algorithm, be it technology, but also be it moderators in terms of human beings checking, videos that are reported, are naturally English, Spanish, sort of the major languages of the world, not necessarily Afrikaans, Zulu, Xhosa, or Pedi. So when you have sort of very localized languages appearing on the platform, it becomes a very complicated process. And also they were saying that certain words start off having a certain meaning, but over time, through culture, through trends, through whatever, start taking on a more sinister meaning. And having to monitor that as well is a whole nother ball game, where 6 months ago a word was totally acceptable to use. Now you'd say, oh gosh, okay, well that's a bit of a slur because it's no longer acceptable to use that word or use that term or that phrase. So not easy.
I'd been unaware of this, that the TikTok community is looking at that. Now, I am virulently against censorship, okay? I do believe in freedom of expression. The problem is, though, of course, that TikTok does engage young kids. And, well, first of all, it worried me that such people actually exist that go out and do this stuff. They have, I think they call them boxing matches or something, where they challenge one another live on TikTok. Now, I think that some of the stuff could be scripted. So the conflict is not really there, but they agree privately amongst themselves that they're going to say all these horrible things about one another in order to pick up an audience. Some of it is scripted, a lot of it definitely isn't. But firstly, it worries me that you would want to put out material, that's so profane and vile and disgusting, But secondly, it worries me that people want to watch this stuff. Why would you want to watch people defaming one another and shrieking and swearing and carrying on? It's sad. Don't you want to watch something that's uplifting, that's going to make you laugh, or inform you? I don't know.
It's a bit like the Roman gladiators, right? Because, it's been with us for, I don't know how many thousands of years that people have wanted to watch, people take each other on in the arena. But the crazy thing with this now is online, right? This digital arena that we have is that the more viewership and the more likes and shares and saves that these videos get, the bigger the audience becomes. And the algorithm almost, drives this feast for more. And I agree with you. I mean, is this the kind of stuff you want to watch online? I don't know. I question it as well.
And the problem is that it makes people seem freer to be offensive. So now even if you put some little thing up on X or on Facebook about, oh, I love my old Cortina, then someone's going to come on and call you some terrible names and say you're an idiot and you don't deserve to live. And it's like, wow, this guy just posted a thing about his old car that he loves, and suddenly now he's an enemy of the universe. It's people have become emboldened. Incidentally, I don't have an old Cortina, but I was just using it.
All those Cortina haters out there, so they'll leave you alone, Cassie.
So, but yeah, as I was saying, there's a whole lot of strong documentaries happening currently on Showmax, and another one is called The Inventor: Out for Blood in Silicon Valley. And this tells of this woman called Elizabeth Holmes,
yes,
who came up with this apparently incredible blood testing system that was going to revolutionize blood testing around the world, save millions of lives, because firstly, the turnover would be faster, and then also it was going to just do the job much better. So many people were impressed. They just threw money at her, and suddenly she and her company were valued at billions, and it was all founded on a fraud.
Theranos was the name of the machine, and it's such an incredible story. There's also two fantastic, call them biographical drama miniseries. There's one called The Dropout, and there's one called Bad Blood, which also tells exactly the same story. And it is mind-blowing as to how this woman got so much support for something that was actually a total fugazi.
It's astonishing that people will just go, oh, wow, this is going to be the next Facebook in terms of like investment. So let's just throw money at this. But without actually doing your due diligence, it's astonishing that people, I guess it's people's greed. They just think, wow, I'm going to invest $1 million in here, and then, tomorrow morning I'm going to be a multi-billionaire. And they just threw money at her. I'm not going to go into great detail because you can watch the docu for yourself. There is, as you say, there's lots of stuff that's kind of factional, fiction based on fact, and this documentary and the two shows that you mentioned as well. But I also found that I tend to do deep dives. Once I see the one documentary, then I'm on the internet doing research and watching allied movies, and you just go down that rabbit hole of research and uncovering stuff. And you've just picked your jaw up off the floor after watching TikTok boom, and now it's back on the floor again.
Well, that's the beauty of being alive in 2025, Tat. But we'll put the details up on the website. I know you've also got some reviews coming up as well. In the meantime, that'll have to keep people bridged till we chat again next week.
Cheers.
You're listening to the Sandton Times Hour.
So what if the person you need protection from is you? In a world obsessed with narcissism, where social media feeds are filled with self-diagnosis, viral toxic trait checklists, and endless stories of emotional damage, few voices are willing to turn the mirror inward. But my next guest does exactly that. Devon Brough, author of The Reluctant Narcissist, has written a brutally honest, deeply introspective book about his own journey from addiction to recovery and then to success, and the uncomfortable truth that even healing can hide manipulation, control, and the craving to be admired. In The Reluctant Narcissist, he challenges readers to spot subtle narcissistic behaviors, not just in others, but in themselves, and to build a relationship rooted in safety, not showmanship. And Devon Brough, welcome back to the Sandton Times Hour.
Alex, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you again.
Devon, I was trying to remember, when was the last time you brought out a book? It was, 2-3 years ago?
2021, the book I think came out at the end of 2021 towards December. So 2022 was really the promotion period for that book.
Amazing.
Get over it.
It's done very well. Get over it. Yeah, if you haven't gotten it yet, go check that out. But in this new book, we opened with a very interesting question. What if the person you need protection from is you? What moment did you realize that you might be the true challenge in all of this and not somebody else?
This is a really great place to start. And I put myself back to the beginning of this year, 2025. And I'd just come back from holiday with my partner at the time. We'd been in Thailand and we'd broken up on this holiday. And I was sitting in the bath and I was just doing some introspection. And at that moment, it hit me. It's not my past. It's not my parents. Right now, it's me and me alone who is sabotaging and who is still destroying. And what didn't fit well with me is that in my head, I was saying, I'm going on 9 years clean and sober. This year is my 9th year without alcohol and drugs, but I'm still in self-sabotage mode. And that really forced me to sit with myself and go, I've put down the drugs, I've put down the alcohol, but I've just cross-addicted. And my cross-addiction was validation, success, the way that people viewed me. And I think it's just as insidious. With alcohol and drugs, you can see the effect after the person has used. But I think, when it comes to validation, that's something that only we can feel when we're in that cycle of addiction.
So in some instances, the phrase, it's not you, it's me, could actually be very true.
100%. And I think this year was just me sitting with myself and going, after everything I've learned through recovering from alcohol and drugs and building a successful career, what have I missed? And I think the key part that I missed is that all of the tools that I used in survival were not going to help me in a season where now I'm set to thrive. So surviving and thriving, you've got different tool sets. And, in my childhood, my parents separated when I was quite young. I was 12. I had a non-present dad. My mother was working super hard to make ends meet because she'd never been a career woman, but now had to look after me and my brother. So I adopted narcissistic tendencies, control, manipulation, in order to survive and in order to get what I needed at the time. But again, those same tools became an inbred pattern with me into adulthood. And it's the things that helped me to survive were actually the things that were sabotaging my present relationships, even being clean and sober.
Do I also get a sense that achievement also became a sort of an addiction as well? I mean, you were replacing sort of one addiction for another.
I think the greatest addiction I had is that I didn't want to be average. I had this from childhood growing up. Inadequacy was my greatest fear. I feared being inadequate. So even when I left rehab and the counselor said, we want you to live in the halfway house for a year, deliver pizza. In my head, the grandiosity kicked in and I said, no ways, I'm going to go and build $1 billion turnover business in the luxury property space. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. So the foundation was, I had a good intention, but if your intention is left unchecked, it can kind of unravel where I needed even more. So that feeling of, I've done so well, 4 years into recovery, hitting $1 billion turnover, but I want more. Because, once you reach one level of success, the sky's the limit and you keep reaching for that next level. And it's still a dis-ease in a way that you're addicted to a future outcome and you can't find peace in the present moment.
Do you believe that people have a full understanding of what a narcissist is? Because you often bump into people and be like, oh, yeah, no, that guy's a narcissist. They kind of throw it around like sweets. But if you had to sort of ring fence it, how would you describe somebody who's got narcissistic tendencies?
I like using the term narcissistic tendencies, and I think we all do. All of us have an ego, and all of us, to some degree or another, rely on certain tendencies, control, manipulation, persuasion to move forward. I think the clinical narcissist is a completely different kettle of fish. But it's just been, every hurt person who's been broken up with is, oh, it's his fault, he's the narcissist. So it's an easy way out to just point the finger and not take accountability. I hear a lot of people saying, yeah, I'm just attracted to narcissists. And part of the book is saying, but what is it inside of you that feels undeserving and unworthy of matching with someone who is whole and doesn't bring that chaotic energy into your life? Because we magnetize people, we magnetize situations into our field, and our inner world is going to be represented and portrayed by the world outside of us. So, it's about looking within and going, where am I forcing, fighting, instead of embracing my favorite F word, which is flow?
What do you think people are going to take out of reading this book? Is it forgiveness, awareness, healing, or is it something entirely different?
Look, when I was sitting writing some of the stories that I've included in the book, I actually stopped for a moment and went, do I really want to share this? It's incredibly honest. And for the person who's been hurt by a narcissist, I wanted to give them a perspective of where it's coming from. And that, not every narcissist is this monster. Sometimes it's a wounded man or a wounded woman who are trying their best to survive, but they haven't learned the correct tools, or they're scared to look within themselves. So to give a little bit of context, not to excuse the behavior, but to go, okay, I can see why that person was controlling or why they did what they did. It wasn't about me. It was about their past and their survival mechanism. Then for, especially in the corporate workforce, where we're just we want to be the best, we want to be shooting for the stars, I think there's a level where it becomes toxic, where work becomes our life and we're a whole rounded person. So when one area just takes the center stage, when something happens in that area, we're on very shaky ground. So for somebody who may be really controlling, forcing and pushing an outcome, this book is a mirror to say, where can I embrace acceptance, surrender? Where can I let go and kind of flow into abundance rather than needing to force and fight and push?
If some of this stuff is resonating with somebody out there listening to this, what piece of advice do you have for them to maybe start turning the corner?
I think turning the corner is when you have the courage to look at yourself, because it's very easy to point fingers and say it's the government, it's my parents, it's my boss. It's very easy to play the blame game, but to take 100% accountability and to say, if it's to be, it's up to me. That is when you turn the corner. Sitting in that bath that day going, I am the one still sabotaging, even though I'm not drinking or using. That was the moment that I went, okay, now I want to know what I'm doing, and then I want to know how to undo it. Because by nature, we're humans of patterns. And if one pattern is not working for us, we need to learn how to spot the pattern, break the pattern, and then replace that pattern with something that's more healthy.
Devon Brough, his new book, The Reluctant Narcissist, available online and also at all good bookstores. And if that sounded like something you might want to delve into a bit more, or maybe do some reflection, well, go pick it up. The Reluctant Narcissist, Devon Brough. It's been good to have you on the Sandton Times Hour.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that wraps up another Sandton Times Hour for another week. Feel free to send through your questions, comments, and feedback on email, editor@sandtontimes.co.za. You can connect on social media @Sandton Times or hop onto the website, sandtontimes.co.za. And of course, save the WhatsApp number exclusive to the Sandton Times, 084 Sandton. That's 084 726 3866. And feel free to send through your voice notes, text messages, and so much more. As always, if you're subscribed to the podcast, do so now on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and other leading digital audio platforms, and join the growing online community. Thank you to all my guests who made time to be on the show this week, as well as the team behind the scenes pulling it all together. A very special thank you to you for listening. And God willing, we'll do it all again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the Sandton Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.